Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation here in Spain, day 316 of the current situation, and the misuse of COVID vaccines has claimed another victim here in Spain, but more about that in just a moment. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. Thanks to people that supported the channel through a donation. You can see your names here. Thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your support. Now, let's get into the news. And as I said, the misuse of the COVID-19 vaccine has claimed another victim, this time a high-ranking military official, in fact, the highest-ranking military official in the country. We can see that the Jemador, or the chief of the armed forces, has handed in his resignation to the defense minister, Ms. Robles, after advancing his vaccination, along with other high military commanders. Miguel Ángel Villarroya explains that he has resigned so as not to damage the image of the armed forces, and that he has done so with a clear conscience. The chief of the defence staff, Miguel Ángel Villarroya, presented his request for dismissal to the defence minister Margarita Robles early on Saturday, who immediately accepted it, as reported by the ministry. This decision takes place after learning that this Friday he and other high-ranking military officials received the first dose of the vaccine against COVID-19, and the defence ministry is already preparing to look for a replacement. Now, this seems to be a fairly common trend here in Spain at the moment, the misuse of the COVID-19 vaccine. We've seen politicians and family members of politicians receive the vaccine, members of the Defence Force, and everyday news stories come to light. But it's good to see that people are resigning, like this military officer here, and admitting that they have done the wrong thing. Now, as we know, the vaccination plan here in Spain is trying to get back on track after a difficult start, but it appears to have hit another hurdle as some autonomous communities have suspended the vaccination plan due to a lack of doses. Madrid was the first autonomous community that announced that they needed to stop the vaccination plan, and now Andalusia has stopped vaccinating this weekend due to a lack of doses, while ICU admissions rise. So various problems still hampering Spain's vaccination plan. However, the Prime Minister seems optimistic, and he said yesterday that he is convinced that the goal of vaccinating 70% of Spaniards in summer will be exceeded. If everything goes at the expected pace, and I am convinced that it will be like that, and we will even overcome it, 70% of the Spanish population will be vaccinated in summer, said Sanchez in a speech before the Federal Committee of the PSOE, held in a telematic way from Barcelona. He explained that 1.3 million doses have already been distributed among the autonomous communities, and more than 1 million have been administered. So there we go, the Prime Minister convinced that more than 70% of Spaniards will be vaccinated by the end of summer. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, there's a bit of a debate going on about what type of masks people should be wearing here in Spain. Of course, the surgical mask is the most common mask that you'll see people wearing here in Spain, but there seems to be a big push for the FFP2 mask to be used in certain circumstances. Mandatory FFP2 masks in bars and supermarkets should Spain follow Germany. France, Germany and Austria have adopted new measures to improve the protection offered by masks against the threat of new variants of coronavirus. Something is changing in Europe around masks. France bans homemade ones and those made of cloth that filter less than 70% of the particles. Germany has chosen to make the use of surgical and FFP2 masks mandatory in public spaces, discarding all the others. But Bavaria has gone further by imposing FFP2 on public transport and shops. So mandatory FFP2 masks in bars and supermarkets and other crowded places. Should Spain follow the example of other European countries? Now, there are a few people asking what type of mask is exactly an FFP2 mask. Well, it's one of these white masks, as I explained yesterday, which sort of comes out on the face, and it's otherwise known as an N95 mask. As I said, there seems to be a bit of a push to use this type of mask in crowded spaces. The only problem is that it's more expensive than surgical masks, so another dent in people's finances most likely on the cards here in Spain. Now, on the topic of masks, various groups of anti-mask protesters and COVID deniers took to the streets of Madrid yesterday. As we can see here, the COVID deniers marched through Madrid with the slogan "Illa, illa, illa, fuera mascarillas." Several hundred people have crossed the centre of the capital, most of them without complying with the protection measures against the pandemic. We want to breathe, illa, 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 allow us to take off our masks, and freedom have been some of the slogans that the protesters have chanted, most of them without complying with the protection measures against the pandemic. In this way, many people without masks have been seen in a march in which the safety distance was not respected, in addition to seeing many people smoking without separating from others. And according to one newspaper, the organisers of the denialist march wanted to install a stage in Puerta del Sol in the centre of Madrid. The Madrid City Council denies any permit that implies occupation of public roads or congregation of people since the start of the pandemic. The Conscious and Free Humans Collective, organiser of the new denialist march in Madrid, which was held this Saturday, wanted to install a trailer with a stage in the Puerta del Sol, but they assure that they were denied permission. So the Conscious and Free Humans Collective not allowed to set up their stand in the centre of Madrid in order to spread their ideas. Now let's have a look at the health situation in Spain by looking at a map of the country and various autonomous communities. Starting with the map of a country as a whole, we can see that the risk level is extreme. The total amount of cases just under the 2.5 million mark. The accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days now at 828. There have been 1,411 COVID-related deaths in the last 7 days. There are currently 27,462 patients hospitalised around the country with COVID, and there are 3,908 COVID patients in ICUs, which is 37% of all ICUs in Spain. The Madrid community now, we can see that the risk level is also extreme. The total amount of cases, the accumulated incidence rate now at 904. The total amount of COVID-related deaths in the last 7 days now 120. There are currently 4,613 people hospitalised in Madrid with COVID, and there are 633 COVID patients in ICUs, which is just over 46% of ICUs in Madrid. The Valencian community now, we can see the risk level there is also extreme. The total amount of cases, the AI rate for the last 14 days now 1,245. There have been 382 COVID-related deaths in the Valencian community in the last 7 days. There are 4,811 people hospitalised in the Valencian community with COVID, and there are 695 patients in ICUs, which is just over 58% of all ICUs in the Valencian community. And finally, Andalusia, we can see that the risk level is high. The total amount of cases, the accumulated incidence rate for the last 14 days, just under 800. 188 COVID-related deaths in the last 7 days. There are currently 3,525 people hospitalised in Andalusia with COVID, and there are 489 COVID patients in ICUs, which is just over 27% of all ICUs in that particular autonomous community. Now, there's been a fair bit of talk in recent times that there's going to be no summer holidays for people here in Spain this year. The Prime Minister came out the other day and said that perhaps the country won't open until after the summer, but the Tourism Minister wasn't so pessimistic, and we can see here that Spain denies summer holidays are banned and says it could reopen by spring. Spain has denied reports its borders could remain closed to tourists this summer and insisted it hopes to welcome holidaymakers as early as the spring. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez suggested earlier this week that only mass vaccination will open the way to the normality we want, indicating that tourism would only restart once 70% of the population had received their jab, something which was not expected to be completed until after the summer. But Tourism Minister Reyes Maroto has since suggested the country will begin to reopen from the spring. She said our priority in 2021 is to reactivate tourism and resume safe mobility on a global scale as soon as possible. We hope that at the end of the spring, and especially during the summer, international travel will resume and travellers will choose Spain as their destination. So will Spain open up to tourism before the summer? Who knows? The Prime Minister is not so optimistic, but the Tourism Minister a little bit more optimistic, saying that it could happen around spring. We'll wait and see. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from recent videos. One here from Al. Hi Stuart, we're in the USA and planning to go to Spain for 2 weeks vacation during the month of August this year, but are worried sick that the current situation in Spain and the rest of the world would not improve to the point that allows tourists to enjoy their time there. What do you think? Thanks. Yeah, Al, thanks for the comment. As I have been saying in recent times, it all depends on the vaccination plan, both here in Spain and in other countries. If people can get vaccinated and it is safe to travel, then I can't see why you wouldn't be allowed to come to Spain and have a holiday. Another matter is that you enjoy it. As you say, there are lots of restrictions in place at the moment, but I imagine that those restrictions will start to taper off as the summer approaches, as it did last year. But again, it's all going to depend on the health situation. I don't think there's any plan for masks to disappear this year. I think masks are going to be fairly common here in Spain for at least another year. But remember that this is a tourist country and a lot of places here in Spain depend on tourism. So I think they're going to be pushing the government to open up over those summer months. We saw the tourism minister there saying that perhaps spring, but I don't think Spain is going to be a place in 2021 where you can enjoy a holiday like you could before the pandemic. I hope that answers your question. One here from Tamsin. Hey Stuart, greetings from Barcelona. I went to see my primary care doctora last week. She is the same doctora I see in the public and private system. She told me not to expect the vaccine in the private clinic, that instead we would receive it in the local public clinic nearby. She also said that things are going very slowly. Counting the days in Barcelona, Tamsin. Yeah, Townsend, thanks for the comment. I'm not really sure what's happening regarding private healthcare in Spain and the vaccine. I mentioned in yesterday's video that the Premier of Andalusia said that they were going to open it up to the private sector if there were enough doses of the vaccine and there were no problems with supply. But as we know, each autonomous community here in Spain is different. What happens in Catalonia might not be what happens in Andalusia. What happens in Madrid might not be what happens in Murcia. So probably a good idea, as you mentioned there, to talk to your local doctor and see what the situation is. One here from Wagner. Are the boundaries between provinces still closed? When are they open? Yeah, Wagner, thanks for the comment. It depends where you are in Spain as to whether your borders are closed or not. Here in Madrid, I don't think the borders are closed. At the moment, we have perimeter confinements to municipalities. As of tomorrow, my local municipality is closed, meaning that I won't be able to leave it unless I have a good reason to do so. There are various places around Spain that do have their borders closed. I think the Valencian community has its borders closed. I think Andalusia has its borders closed. There are places in the north of Spain as well that have border closures. And I don't know when they're going to open up again. It depends on the health situation and whether they can get the numbers under control. Castilla y León is another area that is closed, and Castilla-La Mancha, I think, is also closed. So not easy to move around the country at the moment, unfortunately. One here from Christian. Thanks for your video, Stuart. I'm still watching daily as I'm moving to Spain sometimes this year. I'm an EU citizen because my girlfriend is going to Algete. There's a lot I have to figure out. Any chance you might know where I can find organic food, grass-fed meat around Madrid? Will a cell phone from the US work in Spain? Thanks for your videos. Yeah, Christian, thanks for the comment. Good to see that you're moving to Algete. I don't think many people move to Algete, to be honest. My girlfriend's brother and his family live in Algete. Can you find organic grass-fed meat in Madrid? The answer to that is yes, I think you can. If you go to some of the big supermarket chains, you can find a range of what they call here bio product. You'd probably have to check the label to see exactly how the animals are fed, but I presume they are grass-fed. And I'm sure that there are more specialized stores here in Spain that can supply you with the food that you need, so don't worry about that. The only thing is that you'll most likely need to pay a premium for that type of product. To answer your other question, will a cell phone from the US work in Spain? I think it will. I've never tested it, but I imagine that all you have to do is put a Spanish SIM card in it and it should work normally. You might have to get some type of adapter to be able to charge it, because I think the charging systems are different between the USA and Spain, but I don't think you're going to have an issue getting your cell phone to work in this country. I'll open it up again to the community because I know that there are a few Americans living here in Spain that watch the channel, and they should be able to answer your question about cell phones better than me. One here from Santiago. I came to your country in 1973 for the first time, and a pack of cigarettes cost $1 and a bit. Today, $35 plus for a packet of 20. Yes, Santiago, thanks for the comment. I presume that you're referring to Australia, my country of origin, and the price of tobacco down there. And you're right, very expensive for a packet of cigarettes down there in Australia. I don't know if it's the most expensive country in the world when it comes to buying cigarettes, but it must be up there. And there's a huge difference between the price of cigarettes here in Spain and the price of cigarettes in Australia. One here from Joy. Wages have more or less stayed the same since the 80s, except for the funcionarios, but the cost of living has increased enormously. In the 80s, I spent about 4,000 pesetas on my weekly shopping, about 24 euros. Now I need about 75 euros and I could buy shellfish, which I only do now on special occasions. Now. Still following. Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, Joy, thanks for the comment. We spoke about that a little bit yesterday, that wages seem to have stagnated over the years here in Spain. Cost of living has gone up. Wages have either stayed the same or they have gone down. And the cost of living there, as you mentioned, has increased enormously. I saw a few comments from other people saying something similar to you, Joy, that the cost of living here in Spain is not what it used to be, and things seem to be getting tougher and tougher on a yearly basis. But I think that's just the general trend that is happening around the world. Lots of other people also commented that something similar is happening where they live. So I don't think Spain is unique when it comes to a rise in the cost of living and stagnant wages. And finally, one here from Chrissy. I've seen jobs advertised around Loja, wages 900 to 1,200 euros per month. Not good. Much dearer to live here now than when we arrived in 2000. Yeah, Chrissy, thanks for the comment. That seems to be a fairly common salary nowadays, between 900 and 1,200 euros. I remember about 10 years ago, everybody used to complain if they were making 1,000 euros a month. They were complaining that they were mil euristas. That was the expression here. 1,000 euros a month wage earners, and they couldn't really do much with that salary. And as you can see, nowadays it hasn't improved all that much. But people need to work, they need to put food on the table, and people are willing to accept salaries around that 900 to 1,200 mark. But that's life in modern day Spain. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.